From the vantage point of the city walls, it appeared as though the enemies did not have a formation at all, but were just gathering zombies into one spot. This would have been easy for a mithril-ranked adventurer like Skama to clear them out, if only those monsters were not there. No movement. So, does anyone recognize those undead? Two undead creatures stood where Skama was pointing to. One held a huge shield in one hand and a huge sword in another, while the other one was dual-wielding swords. The magic casters around her shook their heads after she had asked her question. Skama shifted her gaze towards Lilynette. Priestesses were usually knowledgeable in matters concerning the undead, whether they're well-known or esoteric. With her response of a shrug, there could only be two possibilities. One was that this was an extremely rare type of undead or a new species, ignore the nomenclature for now, of undead. Either possibility was worrisome. Normally, it would not have been unusual for an adventurer to consider running away at this point. The other situations in which they would consider retreat were if it had any special abilities that could one-hit KO or could unleash fatal attacks. This was a scenario in which they had no intel to operate on at all. This isn't good at all. We should try to hit it with all kinds of attacks to see what would be effective. Any objections? Not a peep. Then, that's what we'll do. The specifics on who's casting and what they're casting, I'll leave to you professionals to discuss. Just make a judgment based on what you think it's capable of based off of its appearance. First of all, both of them appear to be close-quarters combatants. They did appear to be that way, so they shouldn't veer too far from their expectations, right? It wasn't as though monsters that could disguise their appearance did not exist, it was just that Skama had not seen one in person yet. They do appear to have high defensive capabilities, so it would be dangerous to engage them in close-quarters combat. We'll attack them from afar if that's the case, as is the convention, but physical arrows might not have that great of an effect. We might still have to engage them in close quarters, so the amount of damage we could unleash onto that thing before it reaches the walls will dictate whether we win or lose this fight. But since we also have to prepare for the eventuality of the enemies breaching the walls and the prospect of urban warfare, we'll have to reserve some casters to provide buffs to the vanguard and offensive magic too. That said, she had already warned them to stop using their mana more conservatively than was necessary. If nobody has any better ideas, we'll run with this one. Alright, let's start. The magic casters began exchanging their opinions according to Skama's orders. Skama moved somewhere that was quite a way away from where she was to reunite with her companions, albeit with a single absence. So, leader, what do we do now? Skama replied, what do you mean? To the rogue's question. He already knew about the battle plans which had been explained to him, so he must have been asking about something other than that. The question of what do we do was just too vague for her. How hard should we try for this city is what I mean. Because the enemy are mostly zombies and the city won't be surrounded on all sides, if we wanted to run, with our skills, we should be able to escape easily, right? Stealing one of the boats and escaping with it isn't a bad idea at all, you know. Food has been prepared as ordered, you know. Dumbus. Lilynette replied with a fed-up tone. Our opponents are undead, you know. It wouldn't shock me if they were to march up from the sea. Because the north end of this city faced the sea and was covered with piers, there were no walls covering that side of the city. If their enemies were at all intelligent, they would have chosen to attack from that side. It was still possible that their main army was waiting to come out of the sea. Ah, is that so? That's quite disturbing. Have you told the Earl about this? Nope, wouldn't have helped if I did. Even if we were to only install roadblocks, the perimeter is too wide for that to happen. It would create unnecessary panic in the city first of all. Perhaps there was a reason as to why they are not surrounding us completely. Like what if they were to leave us a small hole in their perimeter, and if we were to try to escape through there, it would turn out to be a trap. Then what should we do? If you want to run, do it through there, Skama said as she pointed towards the cluster of enemies. It's easy to break their formations if it's zombies. Worst case scenario, we'll just have to scout ahead with Fly, to make sure the enemy's main forces aren't looking further beyond. I see, you thought this through, eh? The rogue said, unaware of his two female companions' glares, as if they're trying to say, that's because you're the only one who haven't thought about this at all. The rogue continued. So if we were to run, where do we run to? The neighboring city or somewhere near the capital? We'd just give up on this country. Are you serious? You too loud. Skama confirmed that their surroundings were clear before continuing on to say, yes. To stay and be ruled by the Sorceress Kingdom, the country that would turn so many people into undead, even though they were citizens of a hostile state, would surely ensure an unhappy end for them all. The question now was, where should they escape to? Though it might be easy for them as an adventuring party to escape, the leader of the party would still have to consider various scenarios. 3 countries neighbored the kingdom other than the Sorceress Kingdom: the Argland Council State, the Holy Kingdom, and the Empire. By the process of elimination, all that was left was the Council State, since the Holy Kingdom appeared to be friendly to the Sorceress Kingdom, and the Empire was its vassal. An advantage of choosing the council state was that it was relatively close to where they were, but other than that, their options were probably the city-state alliance or the theocracy. The Draconic Kingdom wasn't doing so great the last she heard, and the other countries have humans in the minorities. Then again, humans were the minority in the council state and the city-state alliance too. If they had to take into account the percentage that humans held in a country's population, they would have to remove the council state from their list of countries to fall back on. She had heard that humans made up less than 10% of the country's population. If distance was no issue, the city-state alliance appeared to be their best option. Apparently half of some of the city's populations within the alliance were human. Sigh, are we really running away? Skama, you should try harder for my own pursuit of happiness. So you weren't acting when you were talking just then about that child. The desire to help and the desire to run away, those conflicting emotions grew in Skama. It was around that time when Skama noticed that the casters had concluded their debate. Leader, we're done here. Understood. Now then, shall we? Act according to the plan. If worst comes to worst, jump down and try to break through the cluster of zombies. To jump down from such a height would inflict some pain even on someone armored like Skama. This issue was solved by their magic caster, who would cast full control on her to let her fall safely. Skama and the others moved to their posts and awaited the enemy's action. Should they consider themselves lucky that the enemies chose not to wait until nighttime to make their move? There was no special signal to signify the start of the battle. No statements were made by the exchange of arrows, neither side declared their justifications, just a great number of zombies stumbling towards the city walls. It looked nothing like how a normal battle was initiated. Corpses grumbling while rapidly approaching them must have been a terrifying sight for some, but to someone like Skama, this was a laughable display. If those were zombies of races other than humans such as giants, dragons, or other giant monsters, this would be a different situation entirely. Not even fledgling adventurers would be scared of mere human zombies. After all, this city's walls weren't something zombies of this caliber could breach. Zombies, though they had more strength, durability, and stamina than the average Joe, they were still worse than an adventurer with even a modicum of experience. This was without considering the fact that zombies were not sapiens. While archers readied their bows, the adventurers' gazes were fixed onto those two undead beings. They were not moving at all. Why? Were they not planning to move at all? Eventually, when they confirmed that the zombies were barely within their range, the archers loosened their arrows as Skama's signal. Normally, they would have waited until the distance between them was shorter than what it was now to start shooting, to ensure they could hit their targets, but since these were zombies, quantity mattered more than accuracy. As expected of the soldiers who were confident in their archery skills, they were fairly accurate even from this range. Perhaps only 2 of 10 arrows missed their mark, which was an insignificant loss. However, it was not as though a zombie would fall to a single arrow. Still, they could shave off some of the false life their opponents had, as long as they landed their shots. The second and third volleys started picking off a good number of the enemies. The adventurers and soldiers did not rejoice at the sight and sound of the zombies hitting the ground. Nothing had occurred that was out of their expectations yet. Their main issue remained to be those 2 undead beings. Strong monsters could change the tide of battle single-handedly. They're moving. The shield-bearing undead began moving, with speeds that were considerably greater than that of the zombies as it rushed towards the city gate. The shield-carrying undead sent zombies flying without much consideration as it charged through them with its shield at its front. Skama, shocked by the extraordinary speeds their opponents were moving at, gave out her order. Initiate attack. The magic caster's spells flew out at the same time. Amongst them, the most destructive was Skama's companion's fireball, as she had expected. The fireball flew through the air and exploded with the unknown undead at its center. A huge ball of fire emerged from the explosion and enveloped the zombies around that undead. Even if it was behind a shield that would reduce the amount of upfront damage, the ensuing raging flames of the fire should be able to swallow it up. Various spells were shot towards the shield bearer. Yet it pressed on as before as though it had taken no damage at all. That caused some noise within the ranks of the soldiers. Don't panic, an adventurer yelled. To the adventurers, this was the logical outcome. The undead's movements were not impeded by the amount of damage they took. No matter how much damage they took, even if it was enough to bring a living creature to the brink of death, they could move around as usual, as long as their false life was not 0. Even the well-known spell Fireball was not unparalleled in its damage output. Some of the stronger adventurers could tank a hit and live, stronger ones could even take numerous hits. Magic of this caliber was not enough to bring down the shield bearer. Adventurers who had not considered this possibility should have been fired a long time ago. But a question still remained. Did it take damage at all or not? There was no way they could find out. That was why Skama focused her attention towards it. Narrowly speaking, spell damage could not be evaded, guarded, or reduced by physical armor. Purely energy-based spell attacks like those should be effective against enemies with pieces of armor or sturdy exoskeletons. Still, it wasn't as though monsters with magic or elemental resistances did not exist. As she had to think of an example among the undead. There was the well-known, super dangerous being known as a skeletal dragon, which had complete immunity to all magic. There were also monsters that could reduce the amount of fire damage they took or even heal from attacks. It was not impossible for that undead being to have those kinds of abilities. If magical attacks don't work, they would have to drastically alter their battle plans. It's fine. Our attacks are effective. Her companion, the one who cast the fireball, yelled.